Yes. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the press. It's not Monday, it's Tuesday. We had a holiday, but we love you so much, and we understand that you guys really appreciate these weekly meetings. So we decided to host one, a special one, today, Tuesday, and addressing you today will be the Deputy Prime Minister, the Minister of Tourism. He's just back from Caribbean Week in New York. He will provide you with some updates on those activities, as well as some of the current affairs happening here. I will not let the cat out of the bag. I'll allow the minister to do that. So without further ado.
Well, good morning. I'm not sure there is any cat that come out of the bag. Yeah, but I think let me start off by, you know, indicating to you that we really grateful. I'll start off with Carnival for the preparations for Carnival last week. We had a couple of very successful activities. The primary schools, Calypso and Soca competitions, and the secondary school, Soca and Calypso on Friday, and the Pan Festival on Saturday. And I think most persons would agree that the juniors did not disappoint. They really showed that the future of Carnival music is in good hands, both with the Calypso and the Soca. It's the first year we were trying this approach to separate the primaries from the secondary. And we had to do it because we introduced the Soca competition, which we did not have before. And it would have been too long a show, so we actually had to break it up. So the Soca Monarchs actually the first time Monarchs, because it's the first time we're having Soca competition. The Pan Festival on Saturday, I believe the attendance was not, could have been better. It was not on a school day, so the schools were not present as they were on Thursday and Friday. And it is something we would need to reflect on, whether we go back to having it on a school day, because previously we would have the school soca on one day and the pan on the second day, but now we have primary and secondary separated, so the 2 days we're taken up doing this. So it is something we have to look at and to decide how we're going to manage it, because we had an increase in the number of schools taking part in the Pan Festival, and I can tell you the music was really good. I mean, the juniors again really stepped up, and you could have seen the work and preparations that they made. So we'll take a look at it and see what's going to happen. We're going to start getting ready. We have a stakeholders meeting on Thursday, when we are going to meet with the different stakeholders to discuss the arrangements for Carnival. And I did say here to you in the previous engagement that one of the objectives we have is to see if we can push the shutdown time from 6 o'clock, hopefully to go up to as 8 o'clock or whatever else the police would allow. We really believe the size of the bands that are expected this year and the number of persons we expect to have on the road, it will be difficult for the parade to do Mega J to Mega J and end by 6. So we will be speaking with the police and all the stakeholders. We also have to see about the route around Castries, what we can do to ensure that there is enough space in between the bands, so there's not enough clashing of the bands. So we have a lot to discuss, and we'll be meeting on Thursday to discuss, these issues. And then we will have a special session for the media, and I think you'll be getting your special invitation for that, when we will discuss all the preparations and arrangements for Carnival. So that is going well. Last week, the Tourism Authority participated, and the Ministry of Tourism participated in Caribbean Tourism Week in New York. And I must say to you, it was a very special feeling, and St. Lucia certainly was in the limelight in New York last week. We had 2 major activities last week. Alongside the Caribbean Tourism Organization deliberations and discussions, we held a partnership activation with the New York Yankees. The New York Yankees is a premier, baseball team in the U.S., and those of us who follow baseball, you would know is a premium team. I mean, it's one of the oldest teams and very well known. And certainly in the New York area, is a premium brand. And St. Lucia, partnered with them. And I attended the game, I attended the activation, and it was really, really special to see St. Lucia featured in Stadia with all the advertising we had, to see the welcome desk we had at one of the entrances to the stadium, and to see the number of persons who stopped to actually, indicated that they had been to St. Lucia, or they have an interest in going to St. Lucia. And it was really special, and I think the New York Yankees have expressed their deep desire to continue to work with us, and we're going to look to see how we can continue to build on that relationship. You remember a few months ago we had a similar partnership with the Raptors in Canada, and our creatives actually took part in that entertainment for the game. We will see what we can do with the Yankees moving forward, but it was hugely successful for us. And on Friday, we had the reactivation of Lucian Links, which is our diaspora initiative, where we offer to persons living in the diaspora the opportunity for them to get special discounts and concessions when they do visit St. Lucia. So, it's open to all St. Lucians, all our diaspora, and for them to benefit from it. And I must say to you, I was really blown away with the attendance and the vibe and the feeling at that event. The people who came there really came to demonstrate their connectedness with St. Lucia, the pride of being St. Lucian, and it was quite an affair. And I'm really happy that the turnout was such. So last week was very good for us in the New York area. The U.S. as a source market is driving our numbers in St. Lucia right now. We got numbers from the Caribbean Tourism Organization that shows the entire region is seeing a slowdown in Canada, in Europe, and the U.S. still driving the numbers. And there's a similar case with St. Lucia. We are seeing a slowdown for Canada, for Europe, and for Caribbean as well. And the U.S. is driving, so we need a heavy presence in the U.S. Also last week, we had the official opening of Secret St. Lucia, formerly the St. James Club, and that will put back 350 rooms back in the market. We had said to you, we always expected the numbers to be affected because of the number of rooms that are off the market now. In addition to Secrets last year, we had Mystic and Starfish coming off the market. And that was almost 700 rooms that was off the market, and that would affect our numbers this year. Of course, Secrets is back, and from all indications, it's an absolute wonderful job they did in terms of the refurbishment and renovation of the property. And I'm sure you'll get an opportunity soon. The Prime Minister, myself, will be visiting the resort soon, and of course the media will be invited to join us and to see what was done there. So far, from what I'm told, they are picking up quite well. It's 1 week since they opened, and they're already seeing good take-up of their rooms, whatnot. So that is really a fantastic story. The fourth story for me, of course, you'd have heard a lot being said about the Banannes Bay Fisherman's Village. And I'm sure you may have some other questions that you may want to ask about Banannes Bay. And, there is so much dishonesty and hypocrisy in the conversation that is taking place from the opposition. And I'll be very blunt and straightforward about it. Very, very dishonest. And next week, Tuesday, we'll be meeting in Parliament, and I'll be making a minister's statement on the Banannes Bay and other related matters. And I want you to go back and just take a look at my page. In May 2016, I had a posting that I made basically making the point that the United Workers' Party had signed an agreement with Royal Caribbean, in 2008 when the leader of the opposition was Minister of Tourism. And again, I'll make those documents of the House on Tuesday, where they had agreed for Royal Caribbean to do similar to what GPH is doing. But in that agreement, they had no arrangements for the development of Banannes Bay. It would have remained as is. Of course, that Royal Caribbean agreement did not go through. I said then that a future Labour Party government will redevelop Banannes. I said so. You could go and read the post. It's, I think, May 18th, 2016. By 2018, of course, you remember Labour Party lost the election in 2016. By 2018, the leader of the opposition visited Banannes Bay with the mayor of Castries, Peterson Francis, who by then they were preparing him to run to contest in the next election. Visited Banannes Bay. Came with police. I remember that clearly. And some other government officials. Everybody started asking what's going on. And the talk we got was that they were planning to remove everybody there, because they had plans for the area. They were talking about bulldozing residents, bulldozing the area, getting rid of everybody, because they were squatters. That's 2018. The Prime Minister's office then, the leader of the opposition, issued a statement saying about the developments that will take place, and very soon people will see gradual, work being done there. The Labour Party then, and I, as a representative of the area, had a press conference in 2018 saying that you cannot move and do any work there unless you consult the persons, the individuals living there, and myself as parliamentary rep. There's a press statement we issued on this. I wrote a letter to the then Prime Minister, who is now leader of the opposition, about Banannes Bay, talking about the process that has to be followed. They came back with some cheap response. Go and talk about Jufali, go and consult about Jufali. Not really dealing with the issues. But by then, we had put out in the public that they had planned to remove the people from there. By then, we had exposed it. I want you to also find out who was the chief advisor in the Ministry of Economic Development by then. Who was Guy Joseph's chief advisor? The same person who wants to be contest the seat now for United Workers' Party government. He didn't do any consultation. He didn't advise them on any long treatise and thesis on how to relocate people. That was then. But they were already in discussions with GPH. They were already in discussions with GPH by then, and I will release the documents again to show that they were already in discussion with GPH. I also have the concept drawings of what they wanted to do at Banannes. And it had nothing to do with development for the people. They wanted to remove the people and beautify the area, because they felt the people living there were an eyesore. That's 2018 into 2019. Then COVID came in 2020, and then elections in 21, and they lost. We came in. We have all what they had agreed to, or they were in discussions with GPH on, and what GPH was offering. We took over the negotiations. We told GPH what they were offering was not substantial enough, and we renegotiated. And we came up with an understanding of what we were going to do at Banannes. At every stage of the process, the GPH team came to Banannes, sat with the residents. We have videos, we have pictures of those discussions taking place to inform them of what they would want as residents. Discussions with them. That numerous discussions. And I will post all of it to show you the discussions. We have testimonials from residents saying they want the development. We have all of that. And then, of course, SLASPER, the property falls under SLASPER. So it is SLASPER's responsibility to relocate the residents. SLASPA has gone through the most exhaustive process, including hiring an expert on these matters to advise them on how to do it. Numerous meetings with the residents, individually and collectively, to come up with agreements with them on the best way to move forward in the shortest possible time. I mean, when you see the list of all what SLASPA had done, including setting up a dispute resolution mechanism in case any resident end up in a dispute over what they would get, there was a mechanism that was put in place. And last week, Thursday, SLASPA organized with the bank a special financial training seminar with all the residents to make sure when they do get their resources, they manage it properly. When you ever hear they're relocating people and they're actually having financial management training for them, and you will see it on tonight's news because it was held last week, Thursday. But then the opposition, that's against development in this country. That's what they're against. Development in this country. How can anybody be against we improving the Banannes Bay area? Why would you be against it? And when in your case, what you wanted to do was to remove the people because you felt they were an eyesore and you wanted to beautify the area. And I also wanted to add, when we pointed it out then, what they said, they started with the truckers. I don't know if you remember, they took out the truckers from there and moved them to cul-de-sac. And in moving them into cul-de-sac, they took over an area that the Goodlands residents were using as a playing field. Go Goodlands and as the Goodlands youths. That was where they were playing their cricket. Goodlands has a very good softball cricket team. That's where they were playing. Guy Joseph stood up in the House and justified why they had to move the truckers there to cul-de-sac. Who was the chief economist in the Economic Development Ministry when that was done? There's no consultation with the youths in Goodlands. There was no consultation with the residents of Banannes. And SLASPA, I can tell you, as parliamentary rep, I know SLASPA has gone and engaged the residents, has sat down with them, has came up with agreements with them, and is working with each individual case. There are a couple of special cases. SLASPA is actually working with all the respective agencies to make sure they are catered for. And there are people that have said they want lots. SLASPA is working with Cronglands to make sure every single individual can be catered for. SLASPA, you can always do better. There'll always be people who want you to do better. And then they would incite a couple persons to be negative and to make it look like, something untold is happening. But they should have asked the two individuals they interviewed whether they've not already collected their checks. That's what they should have asked them. That's what they should have asked them. Whether those two individuals, have you collected your checks already? And the reality is that the opposition will oppose anything that promotes the development and advancement of this country. Plain and simple. Anything, no matter what it is. So Tommy Descartes is saying that the government is forcibly removing people from Banannes. I want the evidence of anybody that was forcibly removed. And all of a sudden, he knows the entire process one must follow when you're relocating people. But in 2018, when the Ministry of Economic Development was doing it and they removed the truckers and put them on the playing field at Goodlands, there was no consultation. Nobody knew what process had to be followed. Nobody, and certainly not the opposition, nobody in the United Workers' Party can lecture us on how to treat people properly and how to put people first. Trust me. We're not perfect. We're not perfect. We will make mistakes because we are human beings. But the United Workers' Party has no moral authority in this country to talk about putting people first and a government that cares. If there is any government that cares, it is the Philip J.P. administration. So they cannot lecture us on showing people that we care. We know about it. We live it. We practice it. And the United Workers' Party and the Alan Chasney and Guy Joseph and now Tommy Descat cannot lecture us on how to treat people and how to show people that we care. We will go out of our way. We've always done it, and we will always do it to make sure we take care of the needs of as many persons and in the best way possible. So I want you to be assured of that. Questions?
Just briefly, you spoke of squatters and the dwellings. So, about how many people will be involved and how much time have they been occupying these lands?
Well, there are about 60 structures there. 60.
60.
Yeah. Most of the structures are empty structures. Most of them are empty structures. There are a couple of business places in there, two restaurants, 2 or 3 restaurants, and somebody with a small shop selling gas and things. But most of the structures are empty. And they are the fishers. And there's another point, it's a good thing you asked that, about the fishers. The fishers are going to get better conditions than what they had before. Better conditions. It will be a genuine fisherman's village. Better. So there's some fishermen houses there where they store their stuff. What we will do in the interim, we're going to prefab a couple of containers and divide it so each fisherman can have a temporary holding space while they rebuilding the fishermen's area, so where they will actually get lockers. They'll actually get lockers. Because right now the fishermen sell fish. There's no running water. There's no proper accommodation for selling of fish and cleaning of fish and whatnot. So they'll get a proper landing area, they'll get their lockers, they'll get a place where they can sell their fish, where they'll have running water and they'll have all the facilities in place. They will get that. But in the interim, they'll get some prefab containers where they will store their stuff. So they'll be better off. So there's nobody being disadvantaged in this arrangement.
And so we can recall there used to be some environmental concerns, garbage referring to that area, even the ships, the cargo ships are talking, the cruise ships. Has that been rectified? Has that situation been rectified?
No, well, when the area is redeveloped, there will be systems in place and arrangements in place to deal with those issues. I mean, the truth is, the area now, the conditions, in fact, one of the residents said it. He said the conditions there are just not really the best conditions for living and for civilized living. We cannot, in all good conscience, bypass an opportunity to redevelop the place. And in redeveloping the place, to help the residents, according to their choosing, better arrangements for them. There is no resident there that can come and say, look, I'm living there, I have my children there, and I need X, Y, and Z. And they will, once it's within reason, they will get it. This is the Labour Party. We had a party that just giving Crown lands to persons who've been occupying it for a certain period of time. We had a party doing that. And you know the next thing we're going to do? Some of the private lands where we've had people living on it for more than 40 years, we will acquire it too and give it to the people or sell it to them, whatever arrangement is best suited. That's the Labour Party. That's who we are. You know, some of us went to school, university, because our parents benefited from previous Labour Party that gave them access to land. So we know the value of giving people ownership of land in this country. We know the value of that because this is the Labour Party.
Just another pressing issue. Over the past couple of weeks, we've had some issues related to the earlier results. Island results. Last week you mentioned the industrial dispute with the workers, the skilled and unskilled laborers, and the differentiation in compensation. But lately there has been some query from the residents in the area saying that the development doesn't follow suit with what was presented to them. So now they talk about hours of work that's still been the piece. The beach settlement, there's no more private beach. Well, I know it's a complicated, but what would you in relation to the developers, the investors, and the government input, what would be your response to that? that the scenario?
Yeah, now the good question, and let me address this. When we last met, I was asked about the Isla situation. I indicated to the media that I had spoken to the developer, and the developer had indicated to me A, B, C, D. And of course, the big thing was that he said that he was reporting what the investigation had revealed. The developer had said X, Y, and Z. The workers had said X, Y, and Z. Basically, I was reporting to you what had been said. And I will say it again. I will say it again. And remember, we ended up talking about Marigo and what was going on about Marigo. And I will say it again. Developers must follow the laws of the country. There are no two ways about it. You have to follow the laws of the country. And we're not going to tell any developer that they should not follow the laws of the country. But I can say to you that the developer reported what had happened. The developer committed to working with the Labor Department to make sure that concerns are addressed. The developer committed themselves to working with the Labor Department and ensure that they meet what the requirements are. The developer made it very clear they have no intention, none, of acting against the laws of the country or acting in a way which is not beneficial to the country. They gave that commitment. So 2 or 3 persons were encouraged to go to the media and to do X, Y, and Z. The developer, as far as I know, has been in touch with the Labor Department. The Labor Department has visited the site. The lawyers are talking to the Labor Department to make sure that they meet all the requirements of the laws of St. Lucia. And we will ask no less of any developer. You must respect the laws of the country. You must. And that's it. As it relates to the residents, there are residents there who from day one wanted no development in the area. That's plain and simple. I have attended 2 public consultations on this project. They've expressed their views. DCA sat in the meeting. I don't know how many of you were present at that meeting. DCA sat in the meeting. Other state agencies sat in the meeting to make sure that all the concerns expressed by residents are being addressed. And again, the developer has given a commitment to address concerns. But we will not accept that the project must not go ahead. The project must go ahead in accordance with the laws of the country and get all the necessary approvals. We cannot ask for more. If somebody says that no hotel should be built in their area, well, that's your decision. If you believe the government is wrong to approve a hotel in an area, you go to the courts. That's how our system works. But you will not say to the government that you don't want any hotel built in the area where you live. I don't know that you can do that. We are creating jobs for people. We're creating opportunities for our country and for our people to have a better standard of living. There are thousands of young people leaving school this year, in the next month. We have to create jobs for them. But there are laws and there's policy that we must follow. And we will act within what the laws require us to do. And we ask all developers and investors to do the same. And we will always do so. So I don't know how much, if somebody says the developer is working 2 late hours, and they raised that at the last meeting we had, and the developer agreed that they will reduce the number of working hours they have. They raised issues about the beach park. We told them they were wrong. There was a beach park. We as Invest St. Lucia, was involved in designing the beach park. The beach park will belong to the people of St. Lucia. It's not no private beach for anybody. There cannot be private beaches in St. Lucia. There cannot be private beaches in St. Lucia. There cannot be. And the beach park will be built and it will belong to the people of St. Lucia. It will be managed by the National Conservation Agency Authority. That's how it's going to be.
And the environmental concerns that I talk?
The environmental concerns, the DCA has a responsibility to make sure that they are constructing in accordance with the approvals that they are given. And that's the best I can tell you. And I will encourage DCA to make sure they abide by the regulations. We must not compromise on those things. We have to stand up for what our law provides for. But we must not give up on creating better opportunities for our people in this country. We must not give up on that.
Any other questions? I do have, just to clarify, Mr. Minister, you addressed it earlier, but the lands occupied at Banannes, is it Crown lands or is it?
Slasper.
It's not Crown lands.
No, it's not
The
Crown.
reason why I asked, the opposition is claiming that the Prime Minister announced that individuals occupying Crown lands, 30 years minimum or thereabouts.
Yeah,
will be
no.
accredited.
No.
Do those people at Banannes qualify?
Well, I'm trying to remember. It's not Cronglands, and they would not qualify. But in any case, government did not say all Cronglands in St. Lucia. We've identified areas. So we've identified Opicor. We've identified, certain places where that first phase will happen. And I'm hoping it can also extend to some private lands, because there are people living on some private lands in Banannes, on the hill, the top of Monlatok, into good lands for 50 years. And they're not going to go anywhere. So we could as well resolve these matters. But you may be on Crongland somewhere that's a strategic piece of land, and they may not give it to you. Yeah? But also to ask them, because I heard the gentleman speaking, ask him how many individuals live in there. How many have been on that spot for 30 years? I learned to swim right there, so I can tell you. That's where I learned to swim. Yeah? Yeah, I can tell you. I learned to swim there. That's why I was going to buy fish from Mr. Farwell, and across the road by Mr. Laborde, we was going to buy our cow's milk. So I know the area. So when they're going to talk about how many people live in there, and also ask him, if you want to be a candidate, how many persons live in there, even registered in Castries South? How many of them even registered in Castries South? But he doesn't know the area. He doesn't know the area. How many houses are occupied by anybody living there? Ask him. There are some people, and I can tell you every single one of them.
You also addressed the truckers. There was one particular trucker who claims that there's a trucking association and they are considering boycotting the Carnival parade as creative industries minister. Are you aware of this?
Well, I've heard it, but I'll tell you, I have some sympathy for the truckers. I have some sympathy, although I'm a little annoyed with a couple of them. Those that broke down the fence by the Banannes playing field. Yeah, if you go there, you will see the fence down because they park there. Some of them park there. But I have some sympathy for the truckers because if you think about it, the nature of their business, they have to have a place, an arrangement where they're close enough where when they need it, they can just go and make their pickups at the ports and to create. We need to think of how we can accommodate them, to be a little sensitive to them. And in as much as they provide a very vital economic service to this country in terms of the movement of goods. And I think Slasper really needs to sit with them and maybe Cronglands to see how best we can put an arrangement in place with them, and the police as well, because I don't think we should just cast aside the truckers and see them as a nuisance. I don't think that's right. They really perform an important duty. So we need to have some very open discussions with them and some very deep, detailed discussions on how best we can accommodate them. And I think, that I don't know how they're going to boycott Carnival and anything else, but I believe, and I said to the truckers, I don't like what's happening around the Banannes playing field. And certainly when we redevelop it, we certainly would want the space and the people living there to be respected. But I've listened to some of them, and we need to take into account their challenges. And in fact, that's what government has to be about. You have so many competing interests. You need to be able to sit with everybody and try to resolve it and make sure everybody gets a better arrangement in place for them. It doesn't make sense you're in government and you don't want to solve problems. You have to solve problems. And not everybody will get everything they want, but it's to have that kind of dialogue where we say to him, this is how much I can give you, and this is how much you must give up, and to make it work.
Okay, so lastly, the opposition is critical of your administration, the administration you're a part of. They're accusing you of paying off Calypsonians to sing favorably, positively about whatever the work the government is doing. Are you aware of any schemes or arrangement with Calypsonians to not sing badly about them?
Well, I mean, if we could give every Calypsonian a place to sell rotis. 'Cause I get a Calypso man and said, we manipulate the thing. We even give a Calypsonian a spot to sell rotis or whatnot. I guess some probably want to get promotion and others want, to get things. I don't know. Let me tell you something. No, I mean, this is absolute pecan and thing. I'll tell you a thing. I love my Calypso and I love going to listen to pecan. I get my blues too. And I've heard my name mentioned in a couple. And and I mean, that's part of it. And you just enjoy it for what it is, and think I could pen a couple to myself. So,
They're already accusing you of writing lyrics.
yeah. No, but I mean, we have a right to. We are citizens. We are individuals. Some of us, before we were in politics, we were in the art form. So there's nothing wrong in you writing and sharing lyrics or contributing to songs. And you want to believe that the opposition does not do the same. The point is, they can't really get material to write. That's the problem. They can't really get material to write. You understand? Because you can throw your pecan. You're supposed to throw your pecan at government. That's what it's about. They say Calypso is the people's voices. Governments make mistakes. Governments fall short. Governments have not fulfilled their mandate and their promises. So you're supposed to give them pecan. But when there's a feeling of goodwill in the country and there's a general satisfaction in the government, it diminishes the space you have to write. So you have to be real creative. For Corey, for example, I don't know it's a very original song. I leave that for what it is. But it's good pecan. And I enjoyed it. And in St. Lucia, we have a unique situation which doesn't really exist in other islands. The interaction between the crowd and the singer is very unique in St. Lucia because the crowd is part of the performance. You cannot come there and perform and don't seek to take into account the crowd, because in St. Lucia, the crowd is part of the performance. But he managed it well. He came in for a lot of bravado and whatnot. I mean, but let's just enjoy it. Is a season for that? Let's just enjoy it. I'm sure the government was performing badly. There'll be so many songs condemning the government. Trust me. The same Calypsonians they say are favorable to you would be singing against you, because that's the nature of the beast. So let's just enjoy this season. This is going to be a very special Carnival season, and let's just enjoy it.
Personally, I do like the pottery, but...
What I'm saying is, I mean, there's one year where we had a guy, is that your room? That was a feature.
Exactly.
So there is always a line or phrase that would generate, like you say, it's really, Calypso to me is the public. It's not the government so whether you sing about the government or the opposition, is the public. I don't want to.
Exactly.
The judges,
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Minister, you touched briefly on regional travel, and so it's going down east. But your government recently announced
Reduction.
tax. What do you see this going, and how do you see the effect?
Well, the reduction in the taxes is really to be able to make regional travel more attractive. So more persons from around the region would travel. We have to wait and see how it works out, because there is the whole elasticity of the price change. If you don't bring it down enough, it might not spur people to travel. In other words, if St. Lucia to Barbados right now is 1,200, and you make it 1,100, it might not move people to travel. But if you move it from 1,002 to 800, people might start traveling because it's now $800 and I can take my family with me. So we need to judge whether or not the reduction was significant enough to move people to travel. So it's still early days. We will see how it works out, and then we'll assess whether we need to have an even deeper reduction in the taxes to cause more people to travel. Okay? Thank you very much. Yeah.
Again, continuation of our special Tuesday briefing room session. All right, the Prime Minister will provide you with some updates concerning existing VAT suspensions or airport service charge reductions, including that, and of course, what's to come in the month of July. So, and yeah, without further ado.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Kendall Booton, I'm privileged to have you in my press conference, man. Wow. DBS has a special thing for me today. Huh? Oh, I need that. I'm very privileged. Once Fisherman's, Jerry's, I need protection. Good morning, gentlemen. You may recall during my budget address, in response to the increase of goods, especially food, in the various supermarkets in the country, I said that you would have an intervention. And I want to recall again, I want to tell you that the cost St. Lucia imports $568 million worth of food. We import into St. Lucia. And as far as food is concerned, we are price takers. We do not control the cost of food that comes in St. Lucia, because the imported food, the cost of imported food happens from outside. We have no control. We cannot control the cost of imported food. What we can do is we have jurisdiction on the price. How does that work? Normally, there are 3 charges on food that is imported into the country: import duty, VAT, and service charge. There is no health and security levy on food imports. So food that comes into the country, import duty, service charge, and VAT. There are essentially 70 items. Of these 70 items, food items, 25 are currently classified as VAT exempt. VAT exempt means that there is no VAT paid on the food, on the item itself, but there are costs incurred on getting the item to the shelf. So whereas VAT exempt, there is no VAT on the item itself, but there are costs incurred on taking that item to the shelves, because cost of transportation, cost of electricity, etc. So even though it's VAT exempt, part of VAT charges will incur on that item, because there are costs incurred in taking it to the shelf. But it's VAT exempt. Now, out of the 70 items, 25 of these items are VAT exempt, and 45 of these items are standard rated. That means 45 of these food items, 12.5% VAT is paid on them. $24 of these 70 items are price controlled. So basically, what's happening now is that we are removing the VAT on all items, on all of these 70 items. All of them are going to be 0 rated. There'll be no VAT on 70 items. What this means is that automatically the goods that are 0 rated, the price should go down by 12.5%. Automatically. Now remember, I said earlier that we do not control the cost of these goods when they come to St. Lucia, because they're not derived from St. Lucia. We not control the cost of these goods. So when these goods come into St. Lucia and the supermarket puts their markup, etc., there will be no 12.5% VAT on these goods. So the consumer, because remember, VAT is a tax collected by the government. By the government, for the government, by the merchant. Let me go for that slowly. VAT is charged to the consumer, and the seller, the supermarket in that case, collects it for the government. We are going to remove the 12.5% on these items, so the consumer will not pay 12.5% on these items. So the price of these items should go down by 12.5% automatically, which is different for VAT exempt. So all these items that were exempt, all of them are going to be zero rated. So they also ought to be a reduction in the price on the VAT exempt items also. But we cannot see that for a fact. What we can see is all the items that are zero rated, the price to the consumer should decrease by 12.5% automatically. Once, even if the cost coming to St. Lucia goes up, the consumer, the supermarket, should bring the price should be down by 12.5%. And the government will be putting mechanisms in place to ensure that this happens. Because as I've said to you again, VAT is collected by the supermarkets, by the merchants, on behalf of the government. These items that I'm going to list for you, the price of these items should go down by 12.5% automatically, even if the price goes up when it's imported. Because the 12.5% that has been collected for the government is no longer there. As it regards the exempt goods, there ought to be some movements in the price, but I cannot vouch for that. What I can vouch for is those that are zero rated, and previously there was VAT on them, and now they've become zero rated, the price ought to go down immediately. Because the government will no longer be collecting any revenue from these sales. Now, let me give you an example of, let me give you an example. Backs and necks, wings, etc., they were always VAT exempt. But right now they're going to be zero rated. They move from the exempt status to zero rated. But what should happen? There ought to be some changes in the price. But I cannot vouch for that because I don't know the cost incurred by the supermarket. But turkey legs, right? Before they were standard rated, that means you pay 12.5% VAT. Now they're going to be zero rated. So these prices should go down by 12.5%. All turkey parts should go down by 12.5%. Now, so all turkey parts should go down by 12.5% after a cutoff date that we will discuss in the Chamber of Commerce, a cutoff date. Let me give you another example. Mackerel, butter, both salted and herrings, mackerel, butter, salted butter, cheese, all these were standard rated. Now they're going to be zero rated. So the price should go down automatically by 12.5%. Automatically. Because they were standard rated before, and now they're going to be zero rated. Then all vegetables, potatoes, tomatoes, onions, garlic, cabbage, carrots, cucumbers, celery, pumpkins, okra, all of these were exempt. Now they're going to be zero rated, so the price should go down automatically. All vegetables, whether imported or whether they were imported or whether they are produced locally, the price should go down by 12.5%. Because previously they were VAT exempt, now they're going to be zero rated. So all they were exempt, right? Now they're going to be zero rated. So we expect some changes in these vegetables because they were exempt, now they're going to be zero rated. Now, split peas, chick beans, red kidney beans, black eyed peas, they were standard rated. They're going to be zero rated now, change in price. I want it to be clear. The vegetables were exempt, now they're going to be zero rated. Now, lentils were exempt, they're going to be zero rated now. So, pigeon peas, sweet potatoes, all these goods are going to be zero rated. So, in summary, all food items in this country, 70 of them are going to be zero rated. So there is no VAT paid on 70 food items in the country. Some of them were exempt, and some of them were standard. Now all food items in the country are going to be zero rated. So there is no VAT paid on the 70 food items in the country there'll be no VAT paid on them. They're not going to be exempt, they're going to be zero rated. No VAT is going to be paid. Those that were standard, there ought to be an automatic reduction in price for those that were standard. Those that are exempt, we expect to see a change in the price. But for those that were zero rate, that were standard rated, that means VAT was being paid, they become zero, so there ought to be an automatic reduction in price of 12.5%. So the government has kept its promise, and we expect to see a change in the price of goods at the supermarket. But remember, we do not control the cost of the imported goods. Are there any questions? You want to seek any clarification?
From what you're saying, it's going to be a significant loss of revenue for the government. How will the government hope to...
The economy is expanding. We expect that there's going to be a lot more money, some more money in circulation. You see employment. Our employment figures are going down. If you notice, you notice that the 4 hotels, they're going to be 1,000 rooms are going to be built on the strip by Rodney Bay. If you go for yourself, and these are things you've seen that the buildings have been demolished. You've seen so, right? You haven't seen that, Jerry? Yes. And we're going to put 1,000 more rooms on that strip. So we expect more employment from there. You notice that there's been more employment happening at the Alia construction. Secrets opened last week. More people are going to be working there. The housing, we're starting a housing in Talvan. People are going to be working there. There's housing going to start at Rockall. The work is starting there. It's continuing there. So we expect them to make expansion in the economy. And from there, we expect to increase the revenue.
And how long will this last for? Is it a week, a month, 2 months? How long is it? Do you have a time frame for this?
The cabinet will decide on the time frame. But I suspect it's going to be at least 1 year in the first instance. But the cabinet will decide on the time frame. And I want to tell you, I want to thank the Chamber of Commerce. There have been discussions with the Chamber of Commerce on these items. So in conclusion, make it abundantly clear that the goods that were standard rated, there ought to be an automatic reduction of 12.5%. Automatic, because VAT will no longer be paid on these goods. On the goods that were exempt, we expect to see a change, but we cannot tell you to what percentage. But on the goods that were standard rated, where 12.5% VAT was being paid, there ought to be an automatic reduction in the price once the cutoff date has been determined with the Chamber of Commerce. The government we are going to be setting up our own monitoring to ensure that the consumer benefits from these reductions.
Will there be penalties for...
Excuse me?
Will there be penalties for...
They always existed. Now, last week I made a pronouncement on the price control goods. Now, St. Lucia is a member of the CET, Common External Tariff. And again, when these statements are being made, these wild statements are being made about the cost of food, people are never told the real truth. St. Lucia is part of the CET, and the Common External Tariff means there are particular tariffs that must be charged or import duty on certain goods. And goods that come from the region, there is no CET, there are no import duties on these goods. Or the import duties on these goods are standard. So you have to go to CARICOM, to COTED, to ask for derogation of the duty on these goods because you're members of CET, goods that are produced in the region. But in spite of that, even if we do not get the derogation, the fact that the government has removed service charge on these price control goods, the price ought to go down. The cost to the consumer ought to go down. The price to the consumer ought to go down. And in terms of the standard rated goods, where we remove the VAT, the price ought to go down also. So my message to you is the price of food in the supermarket of all goods where VAT was being paid before will go down by 12.5%, even if the cost increases from outside. And that ought to be good news for the consumer. You see, the government took its time. The government wasn't moved by noise and untruths. The government took its time and studied, and the government does not agree that removing VAT and having certain goods that are subsidized does not benefit the consumer. The government doesn't agree that at all. The government denounces that concept that subsidizing goods and removing VAT does not help the consumer. We denounce that concept. We think it's backward, we think it's retrograde, and we think it does not speak to the benefit of the regular person in St. Lucia. That is why we continue to subsidize. You heard the Minister of Commerce tell you how many millions of dollars the government spends in subsidies on basic foodstuff, rice, and now a further reduction in revenue by removing VAT, because we do not subscribe to that philosophy.
Mr. Prime Minister, not to divert too much from the issue, but
We want to finish anybody thing on food first before you come to this food, yeah.
you've always endorsed the Ministry of Agriculture's motto slogan, grow what you eat, local foods. We heard about the Banannes Bay initiative. Will initiatives like this, be taken more seriously in terms of local food production, and will there be anything in it for local farmers with all these incentives?
Yeah, I don't. We have some very exciting news for you, which next year you'll find the paradigm shift is happening in agriculture. But a lot of ministers of agriculture start, but you'll be very excited to hear what's happening in agriculture. Very excited. It's already a really revolution in agriculture and food production. You're going to be hearing that very shortly.
Professor, just to clarify, we know the suspension of the service charge took effect June 1st.
Yes.
The suspension of these...
VAT?
Yeah, the suspension of these other items that you indicated, when will that take effect?
Well, we go to Parliament on the 1st of July because, that is VAT. And we have to go to Parliament to change it. That's VAT, right? Now, so that happens the 1st of July. The Senate will have to meet, and then we're going to give you the cutoff date. But the Chamber of Commerce, the importers will know that from the 1st of July, that bill has been passed. The change in the VAT laws have been passed, so they can make appropriate arrangements so we can give a cutoff date.
A lot of persons have been asking about gas.
About gas?
Fuel.
What kind of gas?
Fuel or cooking? Oh, fuel.
Yes. When can persons expect the government to deal with that situation?
We've dealt with it. It was $16.50. Now it's $16. Remember? Yeah, we've dealt with it. It was $16.50. Remember? And at the budget they said we'll see. So gas will not cost more than $16 a gallon. I think up to May 2026 or something like that, or January. I can't remember the exact date. That's what we will let it. But we're constantly reviewing it. But what I can tell you, unless there is a catastrophe, gas will not cost more than $16 per gallon. And we continue to subsidize cooking gas. Again, I think that slips people's memories. We continue to subsidize cooking all the time. 22 pounds and 20 pounds cylinder. We continue to subsidize that. Okay. One more. Go ahead.
Yes, PM. We recently had an incident where somebody got the death on one of our beaches, and one of the things that I've come across within the media is we do not have lifesavers on our beaches.
Lifeguards. That is a concern, actually. That's a concern. That's a concern about qualified lifeguards on the beaches, and I'm sure the NCA is working on it, but that is a real concern. And with I don't know whether you know that the rangers are going to be back on the beaches very shortly, so they could help, because I think they have training also in that, so that should help, yeah.
Sir, recently they had an incident in the constituency where a young man lost his
Oh, you like to do that. You like to do that.
Sad situation. Going to the community today, speaking to one of the residents, he did have concern, I think, well, his brother was one of them that got stabbed.
His what?
One of his brothers got stabbed, and he was concerned about what's happening within the community and just pleading for help within the Masha community.
What help you're speaking for? What help you're speaking for? What help?
What's happening within the community?
What?
The kind of help is that
What?
to come together to try to have some kind of march or something to help
A
the
march?
community.
You see, I'll tell you something. First of all, let me express deepest condolences to the families. And, it's when young people die at any point, you have to be very, very concerned about it. In fact, I also want to express my condolences to the family of a Foreign Service officer at the Ministry of External Affairs who died suddenly yesterday. Very sad. A Foreign Service officer died suddenly at a home. I don't know from what. So her relatives, I want to express my condolences to them. But, I'm really concerned about how people, especially opposition politicians, try their best to sensationalize and politicize these happenings in these areas. It's the same people who complain when the government is trying to clear Banannes. The same people complain when the government is trying to clear Banannes to give these people a reasonable chance to improve the quality of life. They complain about it. The same people who complain about it. The same people who do not want the country to progress. The same people, any advancement that will cause some country to progress, they push back against it. The same people who say that. What do you do in a community to stop people from committing these heinous acts? Basically, you got to learn conflict resolution skills. But the same people who speak about anger, who speak about getting annoyed, who call people the worst names in the world, who castigate people, these are the same people who, on the other hand, they speak from the other side of their tongue and deal with so much hypocrisy. The same people who propagate hate, the same people who call on people's death. These are the same people, When you call on somebody's death on a political platform behind a TV camera, what are you saying to the man on the street? What are you saying to him? If you get annoyed, that person should be dead. That's what is being said on political platforms. And these same people, with their hypocritical postures speak about these things that are happening. But I'm not getting sidetracked. What they want to do is they want to drag me into these arguments. I'm not. I'm focused. This country is moving in a direction that everyone is speaking of it. The direction of this country is moving. We expect unemployment figures to go down even more this quarter. We expect, I'm not sure. But so I'm not getting dragged into these arguments. But the same people who say the most vile things on political platforms, who push hate, who speak about all kinds of discrimination, these are the same people who speak on the other side of their tongue, trying to blame the government when there are conflicts. What example are they setting to the young people of St. Lucia? When they call on people's death, when they call on people to be angry, when they call on them to burn places, when they call them names, when they castigate their families. What are you saying to the young man in the George Charles Boulevard and in Fuller Show? When you tell people if the government is trying to move them out of an area where they themselves would not like to live, who would like to be living in the conditions that the people in Banannes are living in? The people who are speaking, would they like to live there? Would they move there? Would they want their children to be brought up there? The same people who sit in their haughty places and spout political gibberish just to gain votes, would they live there? But when the government is trying to move them into better conditions, and I want you to look at the plan that the government has been prepared for these people in the Banannes area. But you encourage them not to go for political reasons. Now you talk gibberish of when something happens. I am very concerned about the level of conflict resolution. My information tells me that the incident happened outside of the Marshall Boulevard, and the guy ran into the Marshall Boulevard, and some issues happened there. That's my information. I'm very concerned about it. But I want you to understand, there's another side of the story. You must ask the people who propagate hatred, the people who every week ask people to hate people, call people's names, call for people's death, call people to discriminate against people. I want you to ask them what responsibility they have for what's happening there.
But so their concern is about you being the parliamentary representative for the community.
I have never pushed hate. I've never pushed hate. Look at the conditions. I've never pushed hate. I've never pushed discord. What I push is ask them to get a job on the construction sites. I ask them to do so. I'm not so. I carry no burden. I'm concerned, but I carry no burden because I don't propagate hatred. I don't. So I have no burden on my conscience. I don't push discrimination. I don't push evil. I don't push envy and greed. I don't push it. So what they called upon me is to love them. That I do.
Any other questions? Anything else? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Burden, take care.